Storytelling is something that comes naturally to all of us. It's not something you have to think about consciously. We tell stories every day. You go home tonight and your significant other or your spouse or your roommate asks you how was your day. You don't rattle off times and places and incidents. You weave a narrative of how your day went. So we've been telling stories since the dawn of humanity, and we do it because we want to convey information, or we want to warn people, or we want to share an idea, or we want to share something funny. And so we're all gifted storytellers. But telling stories in the digital world is slightly different. So how do you take those skills that you have as storytellers and apply them to social media, or apply them to blogging, or apply them to email newsletters? I want to talk to you over the next hour about the power of digital storytelling and how you can harness it, and the ways that you shape your story and tell your story so that you can reach your audience as entrepreneurs, as business people, as marketers. My name is Kwon. I'm a communication consultant in Birmingham. I'm also the conference director for Y'all Connect, which is an annual digital marketing conference. I'm on Twitter at WadeOnTweets. If you're on Twitter, you're welcome to share any and all of this talk. We're skipping the slides tonight, so I'm just going to talk to you. But if you have questions, just raise your hand. I mean, don't wait till the end. I'll be happy to take questions whenever they come up. At the end, I've got some door prizes to give out. That's why I handed out the postcards. And I've got a way for you to get a copy of tonight's talk. So like a summary and a link to some more resources, and we'll post the video. And that way, if you want to share it with your colleagues or your friends, you're more than welcome to do so. But don't hang on to your questions. Feel free if you want to share it on Twitter or Snapchat or Instagram or Facebook or wherever you want to. Why bother with digital storytelling? I mean, what is so important about doing it? Surely, all of us know how to use some form of social media, Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or YouTube or Instagram. What's in it for you? I mean, you're busy, you're running a business, you probably wear many hats like I do, and besides marketing, besides trying to reach people, you probably also write the checks and hire and do quality control and research and product development and bookkeeping and sweep the floors and you name it. It's not a difficult leap from the storytelling where we're just face-to-face talking to each other to digital storytelling, to harnessing the power of the internet, of social channels, of blogging, of websites. Surely if I can master it, all of you can master it. And so I'm going to be talking about some ways that you can do that. But as entrepreneurs, you may be strapped for resources. It might be time, it might be cash, it might be other things. And so using digital marketing, using digital storytelling can reach a wider audience if you don't have necessarily thousands of dollars to spend on print media or billboards or direct mail or radio spots or TV and so on. So here's an opportunity to convert some of your time into a compelling story that can reach your target audience and reach them faster and reach them more effectively and reach them in ways that you can measure so you understand who is interacting with you and what they're interested in. But this puts a lot of power into your hands that you might not have otherwise. So we're in an age where you have this power on your laptop, you have this power on your phone, you have this power on your tablet. And so you're not only able to share your story from wherever you are, you can update it as many times as you want to. You can reach out to that audience, and more importantly, they can reach out to you. They can ask you questions, they can help develop that story, they can complain about your product, they can give you feedback, but there can be true interaction. This is an imperfect setup. Me up here talking to you for an hour, it's just mostly me broadcasting at you. There might be some interaction. You might ask me questions, I might ask you questions, but for the most part, I'm just sitting up here, yapping nonstop. So I'm just broadcasting. But online, Twitter, email, blog posts, the playing field's more level because each of us has a voice, each of us can interact, each of us can ask questions, each of us can share important things. The playing field's a lot more level. So you as companies, you as entrepreneurs, you as brands, you as startups, you have the ability to reach folks and have them interact with you. So in looking at digital storytelling, there's 3 areas I want to cover. First, defining your story. What is your story as a startup? Second, how do you want to tell that story? Because there's lots of different options. So we'll talk about some facets that you can zoom in on to tell it most effectively. And the last part, and probably the most important part, is how do you monetize that story? That's probably the question that comes up the most, but it's also the most fun to talk about. So if it's so important to tell stories and do it in the digital sphere, the first part is you want to define it. You want to know what your story is. Before I was a consultant, I worked as a journalist. So I worked at magazines and I worked at newspapers. And the media outlets I worked for, they'd been around 40 or 50 years. So by the time I got there, it's like I knew their story. The readers and the subscribers knew their story. The advertisers knew it. All the reporters and editors and photographers knew it. So it's a well-established story. How many of you have had your own business for more than 3 years? How many of you had it for 1 to 3 years? How many of you had a business less than a year? How many of you are just thinking about it and haven't started yet? So all of you have had different levels of time in establishing your business. And so that story may be well-defined, or it may still be written as your business grows, as it changes, as it evolves. And a question that comes up is it okay to tell my story if I'm still writing it, if it's still being defined? And the answer is absolutely yes. I've been blogging for 11 years, which in internet time is just insanely forever. And but I help people launch blogs all the time. And when you launch a blog, you know, there's a page and there's like 1 post or there's 2 posts. Their story is not fully formed. It's not completely written yet. It's being developed as they go along, post by post, chapter by chapter, page by page. And so with bloggers, they're always starting to develop what their story is. And with startups, it's the same deal. If you've been at it less than a year, you're still hiring, you're still developing, you're still getting startup capital, you're still finding your audience. If you've been at it more than a year, you're experiencing growing pains, you're trying to figure out things, you're trying to figure out where to cut or where to add. And so these are facets of your story that you can share with your audience so that they are engaged in it, so they understand where you're coming from, so they can figure out why you're unique. Because that's the thing, is like every person in here has got a unique story based on what they're working on. And it's important that you stand out. It's easy to blend in, but it's really, really important that you stand out, because if you don't stand out, no one's going to pay any attention, no one's going to figure out why they should invest any time or money with you. And so as your story evolves, it's okay to tell that story in progress. Spoiler alert, there are going to be lots of twists and turns. There will be some surprises coming that you're not expecting. Because in the 4 years that I've been doing Y'all Connect, there have been lots of ups and downs, and that's shaped the story till now. Y'all Connect, by the way, it's this conference that we do every year in Birmingham. We do it in the summer. This is our 4th year. And we bring in speakers to talk about digital marketing. So that might be blogging, it might be social media, but it gives people the opportunity to come and sit in on seminars and take notes and network with other people and learn everything they can within a day. And it's a fun event, and I started it in 2013 because we didn't have any resource like that in Birmingham. And as far as I know, it's the only event of its kind in Alabama. I'm not even sure there's an event similar to it in Mississippi. But that's the story of where we are in 2016. That's not the same story I would have told you in 2013 or 2014 or 2015, because that story has evolved, because it's a young event.
Great, man.
Thank you. And that's just, I would just call it just divine inspiration. I mean, we're Southern, hospitality is baked into what we do, and people come from Alabama and Mississippi and Georgia and Tennessee and Florida, so it's a great fit for us. And if someday we decide to do it in multiple cities, you know, it travels well too, I think. So I appreciate that. In defining what your story is for your company or your brand, as you put it together, I think about this exercise that we used to do in the newsroom. So as an editor, I would coach reporters, especially the newer ones, on writing stories. And so as they sat down to write a story, I'd say, okay, tell me what your story is in one sentence. And that one sentence would inevitably be the headline. And it made it easier for them because they had focus. They knew what to write the story about. They'd write out that one sentence, and as they sat down to write their actual story, everything that related to that sentence went into the story. Everything that didn't relate to it, you take out. You don't bother to put it in there. And so you'd have a reporter who'd come back from like City Hall. They'd just gone to City Council meeting. They have pages of notes. And the experienced ones, like they already knew the sentence before they even sat down because they were writing it on their drive back to the newsroom. And so once they had that sentence down, they just start cranking out that story. And that story might be 300 words, or it might be 1,000 words, or however long it took. But they were focused from the start. The newer reporters, though, if they weren't quite sure, because so much had happened at the meeting, they'd be struggling a little bit to figure out what that sentence is. And so that's where we would help them, and they would practice and work on that. Think about what your story, your business's story is in that one sentence. It's a helpful exercise because you want to be succinct, you want to be able to communicate it quickly. It's even shorter than an elevator pitch. So using my example, you know, if I just boil it down to one sentence, it's just simply, Y'all Connect is an annual digital marketing conference in Birmingham that helps people with training in social media and blogging. Simple as that. You know, and if people want to know more, I tell them more. They go to the website, or they go look at the postcard, or they follow our social media. But you know, that one sentence is going to go in your email signature, or it might go on your business card, or it might go in a tweet. It's going places where you have to catch people's attention, and you don't necessarily have paragraph after paragraph to communicate that story. But that one sentence is the starting point where you can start to hook people in, so you can get them excited about what you're working on, why you're different again from your competitors, why you should stand out. Besides condensing it down to one sentence, we had another exercise which took it even further, and I learned this from a writing coach. And so besides taking your story and condensing it to a sentence, he would challenge us to condense it to a single word. And that word could be a noun, it could be an adjective, but it'd be something that helps define what that story is about. So again, you know, using Y'all Connect as an example, you know, if I were to take it down to one word, marketing, for me, is the obvious choice. I could also use training. I'd even use customer service. And the reason I say that is because when I tell people about the event and the plan overall, you know, we're a customer service company in the form of an annual event and online videos. But again, it's extremely useful to be able to think about what your company represents in story format in a single word. And I'll give you an example to try out. So by show of hands, how many of you have read the Bible? So let's focus on the New Testament for a moment. If an alien landed on Earth and found out that the Bible was the most read book on planet Earth and marched up here and wanted to know what the New Testament was about in a single word, what word would you use to describe the story of the New Testament?
Love.
Love?
Peace.
Peace? Good. So I've also heard other examples, like from other times I've given this talk, I've heard people suggest Jesus, redemption, grace. So, we're talking about thousands upon thousands of words in the most widely read book of all time, but you could adequately describe it with love or peace or grace. At least get you the sense of what it's about, what you will be reading, what you will be getting out of that story. So think about your story for your company or your brand and how it condenses down to a sentence and also a word. And as I go into the next couple of parts, you'll see why it becomes even more useful. So defining your story, that's the first step in harnessing the power of digital storytelling. So you're gonna write it as you go along, and you're gonna figure out ways to condense it down to a sentence or a word. The second part that we're gonna go over is how do you tell your story? Because you got lots of options, just countless numbers of ways that you can reach people and that they can interact with you. And the way I want to look at it is through three facets. So there's channel, there's voice, and there's brand. So in telling your story, channel is natural because there are lots of digital channels. There's social media, and there are hundreds of social media networks. There's blogging, there's video, there's email, and there's lots of variations within each of those categories. So you'll never run out of ways to tell the story, but you got to narrow it down. You got to pick some direction to go with. So in looking at social media, I use Twitter as an example. How many of you use Twitter like on a semi-regular basis? So a few of you. Twitter's one of my favorites because it's instant gratification and because I can tweet at people around the world and they can tweet me, and I use it to keep up with the news, and it's always on. But I also use it for business. I mean, I use it to show off the conference and to market my services. But to tell the story of Y'all Connect in tweets, each tweet is up to 140 characters. If I were to tell you that story in a series of tweets over the next 12 months, I think it would take 5,000 to 10,000 tweets to do it. And that's a lot. It's not a lot, though, if you stuck them together as pages of a book, that's a few chapters. You could probably read it in an hour. Writing it, on the other hand, takes quite a bit of effort, because to sit there and write tweets day in, day out, we're talking like 10 to 20 to 30 tweets a day, that takes some effort. And if you want to write good tweets that help advance your story and that engage people and that excite them, that takes a lot of effort. It takes some brain power. But you have to keep in mind that, let's say you follow Y'all Connect and you're on Twitter. That doesn't mean you're going to see all 10,000 tweets in the next 12 months. I'll be lucky if you see 1% of them. That's 100 tweets. That's 2 a week. That's really hard to sustain a narrative in 2 tweets a week, but it's better than nothing. I mean, at least it gives you something to latch onto, because I can share a couple of sentences, or I can share a link to some helpful information, or I can share a tip, or I can ask a question. I mean, there are all different ways to advance the story. But 5,000 to 10,000 tweets may seem like a high volume that you're throwing at people, but the flip side is they're not going to see every tweet that you put out there, but they will see bits and pieces of your story. If you don't tweet at all, it's like you don't even have that social media channel. And so you've probably seen lots of brands, lots of companies that they have a Facebook page. but they never update it, or they never respond to people who comment on it or ask questions, even the most basic questions. And it's like, it's worse than if they didn't have the Facebook page, because when they don't respond to you in some kind of timely fashion, they're also sending a clear message to you, and it's the message that they don't want to be sending. It's the message that drives you to their competitors, because you can't get timely information. So, Twitter, I could send out thousands of tweets. I mentioned that I've been blogging a long time. So if I were to share the story of Y'all Connected blog format over the next 12 months, so by next February 2017, I think I could tell the same story in about 50 to 100 blog posts. That's 1 to 2 posts a week. If you've blogged before, that might seem like a lot of time, a lot of effort writing, a lot of time editing and finding images and so on. And if you've been blogging for a long time, it may not seem like much at all. It might seem like a walk in the park. And when I say 50 to 100 posts, I'm not talking like every single post is going to be 1,000 words long with 10 images. Some posts are going to be really short. Some posts I'm just going to embed videos. Some posts it's just going to be a Q&A, or it's going to be a guest post, or something else. But think about the numbers again, which is, so if I get 50 to 100 posts out there, again, no one is going to read all 100 posts. I could pay you, and you're not going to read all 100. You'd give up. I'd be lucky if you read 5 of them in a year. And some of those are gimmies. Like 3 of those posts will be about who's coming to speak at the conference. Well, you're not going to buy a ticket unless you know who's coming and what they're talking about, and if it's something you want to learn about. And one of those posts might be about the schedule itself, or discounts on tickets, or some sale or something. But there's no reasonable way I can expect anyone to read more than a handful of those posts. But you can see that in telling the story over a long period of time, you've got to put bits and pieces of that story out there for people to latch on to, for them to at least get a sense of what you're talking about. Because, we get a lot of visitors by search traffic. So they wander into the Y'all Connect site, they don't know what we are. I've got to communicate within one post at least enough so they can start to get a handle on it. Oh, it's a conference. It's not a webinar. Oh, it's in Birmingham. Oh, well then that's within driving distance. Oh, it's in June. Well, then I still have time to sign up. It's not too late for this year. If they don't pick up on those things, that's just wasted time and effort on both sides. So you can see the volume of effort it might take to adequately tell the story of your brand. So 10,000 tweets, 100 blog posts. Let's look at it a different way. So if I were to tell that story through Instagram photos over the next 12 months, that's a challenge for me, because I'm a writer. I'm terrible at photography. I just don't think visually. So that's always been a challenge for me. But if I were just to tell it strictly through Instagram, which is a very popular network, I think it would probably take about 1,000 photos. That's about 3 a day. For Instagram users, I'd say that's maybe a little on the high side, but not too high, because I've seen Instagram users who share a lot. I've seen some who share, 1 a week or less. But to adequately tell the story, I feel like I'd have to post 3 photos a day, and it'd have to reflect on like people having fun, people learning things, different facets of putting the event together, the event itself, and so on. And so, we hire a photographer, and that photographer covers the event. And so we've got a stockpile of photos that we use throughout the year, which takes the pressure off me, because, again, there's nothing to shoot for 364 days a year. Or at least me as a non-photographer, I don't have the eye for it. But you can see that, again, that constant drumbeat of content and story snippets and ways to engage an audience. Now, so for our event, we're trying to reach entrepreneurs, trying to reach marketers, trying to reach CEOs, and so on. And so they're on different social networks. So our strategy is spread out over several networks. It's not all focused in blogging. It's not all focused in email. It's not all focused in Twitter, and so on. You have to figure out where your audience is. You have to figure out if they use social media and what channels they use. You have to figure out what type of story they would respond to. Anecdotes, testimonials, behind the scenes, photos, videos, quizzes, Q&A. What is going to engage your audience? What's going to get them excited about the story that you are trying to tell? Yes?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you are consulting with a startup,
Yeah.
right, and I love the angles that you're bringing here, and there's probably no right or wrong answer, but would you suggest that that startup finds that one word or finds that one sentence and sticks to that story? Or is it more of a challenge of, over time, how do you keep reinventing the story, keep people engaged? Like, content is king, right? And so, would you think that what you want to do is keep on that same thing, Geico, 15% off, 15% off, 15% off, years of my life, they're still telling me it's 15% off, and it's working, right? Or there's other companies that are completely reinventing, what their content is. I was just curious to get your thoughts on that.
Okay, so I think it's a question of, you're trying to figure out how consistent you want to be in that messaging from day to day, month to month, year to
Just
year.
thinking about what is the importance of the consistency.
Sure.
Is it super important, just stick to it? That one word, stick to that word. Or is it, how do you keep reinventing that interest?
I give you a two-part answer. One is consistency is a secret weapon among entrepreneurs, and the reason's because you got fewer people to deal with. So it's really easy to keep the message consistent. When we're talking about a huge company, message consistency is really difficult. Unless they've got their act together, or they just restrict everything to marketing only. No one else is allowed to even come close to messaging. It's difficult to maintain consistency. Because, I mean, not only are they trying to do it internally, they're also dealing with ad agencies and so on. But typically, as entrepreneurs, it's one or two or three people dealing with messaging. So it's easy to maintain consistency. And it's important because if you don't have a big budget, but you've got a great story, it's easy to maintain a consistency with your audience because you know what your channels you're using, you know how to respond to people, you know all the information. Like, you don't have to go ask another department what the correct answer is. You already know it, or you're going to make it up. And so as a single person, like running all the Y'all Connect social media, like, it's really easy for me to be consistent because I know what our messaging is going to be for the next year, and I know what our stockpile of resources is, and I know what the answers are. The other thing that I would put equal to consistency is metrics and feedback. So in social media, in email marketing, in blogging, you have a series of metrics that are important to you that start with the most basic, traffic. How many times did someone click on something or look at something, or how long did they look at it? And then all the way up through, did they go through to shopping and purchase pages? Did they complete the sales cycle? How satisfied were they in terms of their purchase and so on? And so the way I would use metrics in figuring out how consistent you should stay in your storytelling is, I've run blogs before, and I've helped manage like teams of writers and figure out, okay, within this broad category, what are we going to talk about on a daily basis? What are we going to use for our 3 posts today? What are we going to talk about on social media? What are the topics that get traction and traffic? And so by staying consistent with our top performing topics, but then throwing in a curveball every once in a while, we're able to not only grow traffic month to month and year to year, we're also able to establish which new topics we should do more of and which we should just give up on. Because after you give it a fair try, you'll know if something sticks or not. And so that gives you some room to maneuver into figuring out, okay, we know these things work, but we also know our audience might get tired of it, so what are some things we can test along the way? And by testing out those topics and then seeing what the metrics are behind them, you can start to evaluate how much or how little your topic mix should change. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be on a case-by-case basis. Yeah, it's interesting.
Typically what people forget to do is they forget to measure. They forget to see what the metrics are and then figure out, is this a keeper? Do we test it out some more, or do we give up on it? And that's the nice thing about digital. when we talk about traditional media, and I'm a fan of traditional media because I still watch television, and I used to work for print publications, but you buy an ad, you buy a commercial, they give you round numbers as to how many people looked at an ad or a commercial. But it's not an exact science. I can tell you exactly how many people looked at my Facebook ad, or how many people clicked on it, and how many people actually landed on the website, and so on. So at least there are some firmer numbers there, and you can act upon those. But when you talk about mass media, it's a game in trying to figure out exactly how many people looked at your advertisement, and did you pay the right amount for it? Yeah.
As a general rule of thumb, when it comes to telling a story, how do you know if you should be focusing on telling the story of the product or telling the story of the business behind it?
Should you talk about the product more, or should you talk about the business overall? It's another it depends answer. It depends on your audience. As a consumer, I want to know a lot of things about what I'm buying. Typically what I want to know about are features, costs, and options, but other people want to know about how it was made, or what the history of the company was, or does the company behave ethically, and so on. And so that it depends on what does your audience care about, and as you test some of these stories and blog posts and social media shares, what resonates with them. Because over time, they'll tell you. You won't have to wander around in the dark. They'll react more favorably to some than to others, and then you build upon that. Does that make sense? You know, when starting some of those blogs that have, you know, one topic and one mission in mind, we don't know what's going to perform the best within those subtopics. And so it's just this constant test and repeat, test and repeat, test and repeat. So starting out without the answers is perfectly fine. That's how most of us do it. Just pay attention to the numbers and then use that to your advantage so that you can grow more quickly. Because your competitors may not pay attention to their numbers, and therefore they're just going to keep stumbling around doing the same thing over and over again. But in digital, that feedback loop is something that you can use to grow your audience and your sales leads more quickly. So in how to tell your story, channel is the first facet. Second facet is voice. Voice isn't a challenge if you're operating by yourself, because you are the voice of the company, the end. If there's more than one person, then there are some questions that you might want to figure out. When I worked at newspapers and magazines, typically, when I wrote a story, I'd write it in the voice of the publication. So when you go and read stories from the Wall Street Journal, whether you read them in print or on the website, they typically all revolve around one institutional voice. And it's distinct, because if you go and read a bunch of stories from the New York Times, you'll hear and sense a different voice. Or if you go to BuzzFeed, or if you go to Huffington Post, there's usually some kind of institutional voice and tone and so on. So you, as your business owner, have to decide, should everyone who's dealing with marketing and facing the public, should there be an institutional voice, or should it reflect the diversity of opinions and backgrounds and experiences? There isn't a right answer. There are strengths to each approach and there are weaknesses to each approach. And you can change it. I mean, like if you start out as one voice and it's not working for you, you can try multiple voices. It's not written in stone, and it's easily fixed if you decide you want to try a different approach. But you know, it's a choice between consistency, it's a choice between diversity, it's a choice between what different parts of your company and experience you want to reflect and what resonates with people. Are you familiar with Zappos, the shoe company, online shoe company, got bought up by Amazon? Like everyone at Zappos handles social media customer service, which means that they all reflect the brand, but they each have their own personality, and they're allowed to show it and to engage people that way. But that also becomes part of that larger Zappos brand of customer service and a very personal experience. And that's the last facet you should look at in terms of how to tell your story, is brand. As entrepreneurs, branding may be the first thing that you think about. It may be the one thing that you want to get finalized before you launch. or it may be just something that you develop along the way. I've worked in both situations. I will say that if you launch with a fully formed brand, it does make telling your story easier, makes it easier to reach people. There are clearly defined edges. It just makes it easier for people to latch on to what you're trying to do. But I'll also say this, which is you have a story that reflects your brand, your values. What do you stand for? Why are you different from the person next to you? And so that attracts a certain set of people, and that's great. Those are the people who are interested in you and want to learn more. But it should also simultaneously repel people who aren't interested in you, which is, again, a desired outcome. Because if you bring in people who are just like kind of on the fence or really aren't about what you're trying to do, they're just dead weight dragging you down because they're going to complain, they don't get what you're doing, they think your price is too high, they don't think you offer the right stuff. That's fine. They belong with another company or product or group or service. So having that clearly defined brand, having it reflected well in your storytelling, pulls in the right people and keeps out people who are just never going to engage with you in the right way. So channel, voice, brand, the things you think about in how you tell your story. So there's defining your story, there's how to tell your story. The last part, how to monetize it. If I could sit down with each one of you for 15 minutes and you told me about your business, I would just throw out idea after idea after idea on how to monetize it, just because it's so much fun for me to talk about that aspect till you just like run screaming from the room, because we always have more ideas than we have time to execute. Your job as owner is to figure out which idea will work the best with the least amount of effort, the least amount of resources. But you've always got ideas and jobs and tasks competing for your time. You're telling your story to people in a digital audience, and you want them to learn more about you, to ask you questions, to sign up for your newsletter, to visit your blog post, to look through your catalog, to visit your showroom, to take some kind of next step. In monetizing that story, I'm going to ask you 3 questions that will help you focus that story to make sure that you are monetizing successfully. The first question: are your fans hanging on every word? Is your story compelling? How many of you watch Game of Thrones? Season 6 is starting soon, right? I think, or the next season, whatever the next season is. Something you're looking forward to? How long has it been since the last season aired? Has it been about a year?
Yeah, I think so.
For the, I don't know if you're diehard addicts, but for some folks, season 6 should have started the moment season 5 ended. Like waiting 8 to 12 months is just agony for the next season because it's that good. Like it's dangerous and it's shocking and it's violent and it's sexy and there's just a lot of good layered storytelling in there, and it's compelling. They want more of it. The challenge for all of us who are not George R.R. Martin is to create stories that are as compelling for our target audience. I mentioned 10,000 tweets earlier on, and it seems like a lot, but the thing is, like, if you're doing a really good job, people will want more of it. Like, you don't have to worry about spamming them. You don't have to worry about overwhelming them, because there's always an off switch. They can always unsubscribe, unfollow, unfriend, and that's okay too. People's tastes change. I don't have a TV at home that's locked on one channel. I don't watch Netflix and only watch the same movie and over again. I flip between different movies and TV shows and programming, and everyone does that. Well, the same is true with social media marketing. The same is true with email marketing. People are going to come, and they're going to go. And if you're doing a great job with your storytelling, if it's that compelling, they're going to want more. You just can't throw enough at them. I think if George R.R. Martin could clone himself and create more seasons of Game of Thrones, I think he would, because I don't think he can satisfy the fan base's appetite for stories. So how do you make each part compelling? How do you bring people back for more? You've got to understand what your story is. You've got to capture the essence in each part of the story you share. When I sit down to write tweets, when I sit down to write blog posts, when I write our newsletter each week, I not only think about what our story is and what I'm trying to share, I think about that one sentence, about what does y'all connect about, and then I think about those one-word descriptions: training, marketing, customer service. And so there is an opportunity in every tweet, in every blog post, in every email, in every Instagram photo to convey what our story is, what it's all about. And through X number of tweets and X number of photos and X number of blog posts, people will pick up on that. And the right audience will love that and keep coming back for more. And the wrong audience will move on. They'll just change the channel to something else. But you have to be compelling, because it's not just that you have to hold people's attention, it's that there are so many voices competing for that attention on a daily basis. I mean, from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, Facebook posts and Snapchats and tweets and commercials and billboards and Pandora ads and junk mail and text messages and email and spam and radio commercials and all kinds of messages and advertisements and junk are competing for your attention nonstop. And what do people pay attention to? Cute things and funny things. Yeah. So you're competing against lots of competing messages, you're competing against lots of advertising, you're competing against lots of spam, you're competing against viral things. And that is the environment in which your story has to be compelling and engaging and intrigue people so that they want to know more about what you're doing. So the first question, are your fans hanging on every word? It is a tough level to reach, but aspire to it, go for it, because your competitors, they're probably just trying to get through the day. They're probably just trying to crank out something to fill space. There's plenty of that out there. Just go to that next level of drawing people in. The second question in monetizing your digital story is, are your fans helping write that story? As a writer for a long time, I have worked very hard at becoming better at it, whether it's print articles or freelance or blogging. And so I sit down, I come up with an idea, I write it, I edit it, I rewrite it, I cut it back, I work on it to make sure that it's as strong as possible. And so naturally, as an egomaniac, I want full credit for it. Put my name at the top of it, and show it off as my work. So the hardest thing for me to do is to let other people help write that story. But it's important to keep in mind because, as I mentioned earlier, social gives everyone a voice. And for a long time, like a lot of your favorite brands and companies weren't participating in social at all. So we're all sitting there talking to each other and complaining about this airline or this retail store, and we're writing the story. So that company isn't even bothering to participate in it. Now they might be a part of it. They might be just broadcasting, or they might be actively telling the story and allowing us to participate as well. Participate through asking questions, making suggestions, requesting things, and so on. so as a once-a-year event, we don't get a lot of opportunity to get people into the story. But it's really important that they do so because we put a high value on customer experience. And so when people come to Y'all Connect, we give them 2 surveys. One is a survey about the speakers, and one is a survey about the event itself. So how's the food? Was it too hot or too cold? And how was the sound? How was the light? So on. And we pay really close attention to what they tell us. They are helping write the story for next year. For example, that speaker survey, it's all on paper. So after the conference, I just read through every survey and then enter it all by hand into the computer. Let the computer crunch the scores, and I read through all of their compliments and suggestions and complaints. So, I'm friends with some of the speakers. I know them from the speaking circuit and so on. But whatever my status is with them, if 250 guests tell me that this speaker did a terrible job, we don't bring them back. I mean, I have to listen to what our guests are telling us. And if they're telling us that they're doing a subpar job, if they're not doing a good job presenting, or they're not bringing good information, or whatever the problem is, I have to act upon that. I have to make sure that their voice is heard. They're writing the story for next year, so we have the best event possible. So that is the one time that we can bring them in the story, but we make sure that their voice is very loud and clear in writing that next chapter. Think about your audience and your fans and your customers, and how are they involved in shaping your story? What feedback are they giving you? Are you listening carefully, and are you able to integrate that and show them that they are part of that story? And that's something that I have to be careful about. I have to make sure that people understand. It's like when you tell us about what speakers you like and what speakers you don't, I have to make sure that they understand. We actually act upon that. Because I've been to lots of events, lots of conferences, and I don't give a damn what I think about their speakers or their setup or their Wi-Fi or anything else. As long as my check cleared, they're happy. And the only thing I got at this point is I either come back next year or I don't. I've been to events as a speaker. They don't care what I think of their event as a speaker. As long as I show up, do my thing, and get out, they're fine with that. So I have to communicate with our audiences, like, no, we're actually listening to you, and we're acting upon that information. You are actively shaping the story. Because it's easy to overlook that part. Because it happens to all of us as consumers and fans. So, is your audience helping write the story? Are they hanging on every word? One more question in terms of monetizing your digital story. Who is the real star of your story? Those of you who have worked in marketing, and I've been fortunate that, even in my career working as a journalist, I've worked on different aspects of marketing, our daily product and our overall product and special projects and so on. But I picked up a lot about marketing along the way. The natural answer is, the star of our story is our product and our company. I mean, you as entrepreneurs, you came up with an idea, you willed it into existence, you poured a lot of time and energy and sweat into it. You've had setbacks. If you're like me, you've been up late at night wondering what has gone wrong and will I make it to the next day and the next week. There are lots of challenges and bumps involved in being an entrepreneur, and you know every facet of that story because you've lived it. But if you really think about it, you want the audience to be the star of the story. We're all egocentric. We're all the hero of our own story. We're all trapped in that narrative. So it's easy to focus on ourselves, it's easy to focus on our company, it's easy to focus on our event as the star of the story. But if I were to tell the story of Y'all Connect in a sentence and focus on the real star of the story, it's really that Y'all Connect makes you better at marketing through our conference and through our videos. so that you can grow your business. It's not about how long I've toiled behind the scenes or how I came up with the idea or any of that. It's about you and whether or not you need that help with your business or know someone who wants to learn more about marketing in the digital area. So it's difficult because it requires a huge shift in mindset as to what your focus is really about. And if it's really about the audience, if it's really about the fans, if it's really about the customers, you start to rethink what your story is and who the hero of it is. It's something that you have to work on. It's something you have to think over. It's something you have to wrestle with. At least I've had to, because you're putting your own ego aside and you're making sure that you're focused on the needs of your customer, what they're looking for, and how they can benefit from it. I grew up using Apple computers and have bought their laptops and their phones and iPods and so on. And Apple spends like millions upon millions crafting their brand and doing TV commercials, doing print ads, and all kinds of ways to reach consumers in a very competitive market. And I don't watch the commercials and buy their products because it looks exciting or cool or whatever. It's like, I look at it and go, I would look really cool with that laptop. And I bet I could get a lot done. And I bet that even though I have to spend a little bit more, I'm going to get years and years of use out of it. I'm the hero of that story because I'm using their product. And for me, it's important that it lasts a long time, it's easy to use, and it's got some thought behind the design and how it looks. Those are things that matter to me. They may not matter to anyone else, but that's what matters to me, and so that's what resonates. But it's not because I see Bono using their products that I get into it. It's because I see me using their products and I get into it. And so over the years, I've been a loyal customer, and I think highly of their brand, and I know what I like about their products and what I don't like about their products. I don't know what their psychology is in reaching me and putting me at the center of their story, but it's working. But you have to think about, how does your most ardent fan, how does your most loyal customer fit into that story? Are they the hero of that story? And if not, how do you make sure that they are? Because again, we're all the hero of our own story. So you got to put yourself in their shoes. You've got to make sure that it's focused on them. When you think about the focus of your story, that's where, if you shift that focus so that the audience is central to it, that's where you begin to monetize it. Because if they're helping write the story, if they're the star of the story, if they find it compelling, if they're hanging on every word, then they're ready to take the next step. They're ready to find out more about your company. They're ready to sign up for the newsletter. They're ready to attend one of your events or visit your brick and mortar operation. It's challenging, but if you put thought into it, you can ensure that the audience is central to your story. Before I wrap up, does everyone have a postcard? So on the postcard, there's the date for Y'all Connect. There's more information on finding out more. So there's my email address and Twitter account and website. And so if you want to know more about the event, just visit the website or contact me. And if you have questions about tonight that you didn't think of tonight, just email me or tweet me. I'll be happy to answer questions about storytelling or about marketing or about the event itself. There's a scratch-off circle. I've got a couple of door prizes to give out. If you were one of the lucky ones, you can just come see me afterwards. If all you have is a code on there, that code might be good for a free video. We have videos from all of the speakers that we've recorded over the years, and so you can pick your favorite video and see if the code works on checkout. But the event's June 10th, full day, 10 speakers. We've already announced half the lineup. If you or someone you know wants to learn more about marketing, come up and see us in Birmingham on June 10th. The event's a lot of fun. You'll get to network with some great people, get a van together, carpool. And we've got special rates at the hotel, so if you're going to drive up the night before or stay the night and enjoy Birmingham at night, you're more than welcome to do so. If you'll give me your business card afterwards, I will send you a copy of tonight's presentation and a link to the video and some links to other resources. If you did not bring a business card, just jot your email address on the sheet of paper and I will email it to you. And also put your email address into the Y'all Connect mailing list. If you write your email, write it really neatly so I can read your handwriting. So I said it at the beginning, we're all naturally gifted storytellers. And with just a little bit of effort, you can adapt to telling it online in the digital world. Think about what your story is, how you're defining it, how you want to tell it, based on your audience, based on who you're trying to reach, based on what they would respond to. And when you monetize it, make sure your focus is on them. So that way you can reach more people, you can share your story to a bigger audience, and so everyone can live happily ever after. Thank you.